Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Whenever, for some reason, when I was in the class and even now, whenever Jan says all hands, I want to go like this. So I guess that's not technically required, but to me, it's part of the deal. So, hey. So we have some alums here. Now, if you can shout out what classes you're from. If you're, yay?
Way back.
Allagash? Who else do we have? Damascata, last year. Vascahegan. Anyone else? And we have some ICL alums too. Awesome. So this class is definitely the best class, except for all the others. So, it's an amazing thing every year to have some role in a small way in helping a class launch during the 9 years I've been here at MDF, and then to help you close it out. And I was telling folks, like, the hardest month is next month because, after being together every month, that void that leaves of those relationships and the connection and the looking forward to is a tough thing. I certainly want to acknowledge Julie Bean, who behind the scenes and occasionally in front of the scenes really drives everything for a lot of it. Thank you, Julie. And she also supports me on Leadership Maine Light that we do for Maine legislators, the Policy Leaders Academy, which is intense too. So she's often juggling many balls in any given week. And if she drops them, she notices, but the rest of us don't. So she's really good, and we really appreciate it. And of course, Kathy Shannon, who you've seen around for a couple of days, if not before this during the year, is our communications director and also does our alumni engagement work. So she, I think, wants to make sure that all of you stay engaged somehow with MDF. So just a few quick thoughts. I was thinking about this quote, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end, right? Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. And I'm like, oh, of course, yeah, that's the pop band Semisonic. So I Google it, and of course it's like, Roman philosopher Lucius Seneca. And I'm like, no shit, right? So I'm like, you learn something every day. And by the way, if you go listen to that song, Closing Time by Semisonic, it's a song that sounds like it's about who you're going to pick up at the bar. And in point of fact, it's about he and his wife having their first child. So go listen to that song, and you will be like, wait a minute, how could that be? Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. And so you were all amazing leaders before you got here, or you wouldn't have been in this class. And we hope our track record is that we don't screw it up for you. So many people, come from this program and, of course, go on to become CEOs and executive directors and state legislators and other points of influence in our wonderful state, if they were not already. So all we can say is we didn't screw it up for you. But hopefully we've added something of real value, and we understand fully that value just comes from the people and the places and the things in our state that we can expose you to and help you think about. And most of all, it comes from getting to understand and appreciate and learn from the very people in this room who are your classmates. So we know our job is to create the container, as Jan often says, for just a wonderful learning to occur that you all drive. I just have a couple of other quick thoughts to share. Today is the last day of the session for the 131st legislature. They're dealing with thorny issues, including important policy issues that they have to determine whether to override a veto or not. The final elements off of their funding table, which MDF is on, I'm proud to say. We're trying to get them to restore part of the public to this wonderful public-private partnership. So half of my mind is in the halls of the state capitol. But we don't work with the legislature deeply every day. We work with them on this wonderful learning opportunity that we give them, like we give you Leadership Maine. And we work with them occasionally on some other things too. And they certainly love and use our annual measures of growth, benchmarking report to help guide their policy decisions. But watching them in the fray, every year, including this year, I think a little bit about like some of the peculiar challenges and stressors of leading in that public way, of being a public servant in the Maine legislature. And some of those things are universal to leadership anywhere, though. So I think about, we often say leadership is thankless. Well, if you think about folks in the public eye in Augusta, Washington, and elsewhere, not just thankless, heaped with criticism and even scorn, okay? So, I think about how tough that is and how hard it is to remind ourselves in that venue of leadership, let alone our own, that you have to have an ego, you have to have a thick skin, or you couldn't endure that, right? But you also have to remember that everyone shows up trying to do the right things for the right reasons as they see it, even if those right things and right reasons are very different than the starting suppositions that we have ourselves. And so, that criticism and scorn is mostly unwarranted and mostly unhelpful to wanting to have good people to take on leadership. And I think sometimes in our own organizations too, say, what the hell is leadership doing? I mean, it comes with the territory, right? Leadership is a team sport is one of the things that I'm constantly reminded of as I watch our public servants work on some of these things in the scrutiny of the public eye. Because, like in our committee alone, the committee was tasked to work on an issue that I'm not really deeply involved in. This issue with right to repair and data confidentiality of the many electronic devices, including those in our vehicles, but many others, that run our lives and have a lot of data about what our lives are about. And so the committee was like week after week grappling with debate and discussion and alternatives and scenarios and amendments on the facets of this issue. And I was just kind of a bystander there, because it wasn't my issue per se this session. But it reminded me that, it's a team sport because it's not just about a good direction to go in and a good idea to pursue. It's whether you can get 51% of, other people who care about this to come with you. And it's a team sport always of, what is worth pursuing, but is worth pursuing that I can bring others along with me on. It's a team sport. Persistence and resilience wins over best ideas and good intentions. Leadership is a grueling process, and having some principle and direction that you're pursuing, but having the flexibility, right, to move to where you can mobilize others without losing the integrity of that direction. It's not easy. But in the end, persistence and resilience over months and years in that committee room or in our own organizations is what ultimately gets an outcome, that hopefully we can be proud of and that moves our organization or our whole state forward. Sometimes the most important courage is just asking. If we happen to prevail on restoring some greater public investment in MDF's own work, it will just be because in the end we dared to ask and we persisted in that, and said, geez, I don't know, we're not sure we want to get involved in this political morass, and there's so many other more important issues, and we're probably going to spend 2 years fighting for this, and who knows. But oftentimes in that whole process, the most important courage is just to ask. And I think that's true in any line of leadership. If you don't ask other leaders to consider your perspective and your voice, if you don't ask other leaders to consider moving the organization in a different direction that's right for more people, it won't happen. And then finally, I learned oftentimes throughout this process, an open ear and a supportive word sometimes matters not only as much, but a lot more than any assurance of success. Because truly throughout this whole process, of advocating a little bit for what we hope to make happen, just legislators who are willing to listen and respond and be accessible and give some encouragement that it would be something they might be willing to fight for. Even though they weren't in a position to know if it had any chance, they weren't in a position to necessarily put it ahead of other worthy priorities at any given moment. But knowing that others are willing to listen and advocate and fight alongside you, it lifts you up, right? It keeps you going. It makes you think, all right, this is worth continuing to hang in there next week, next month, on advocating for something you think is worthy. So as a leader, I'm kind of reminded of that gift that some of those legislators gave to me during the process kind of reminds me that that's a gift I need to give to others intentionally from time to time. Like, I can't tell you if our organization can move in that direction, let alone succeed in it. But just by being willing to listen and be willing to say, I might put some effort into making a run at this, it validates and holds people up and says, all right, maybe it's not this year, but I can keep fighting for this good idea. So that's a little bit of what, as I reflect on just what I've learned from watching those who serve us in a very stressful and public way, some things that I'm reinforced in wanting to take back to my own leadership and never forget about the way public servants lead as well. I'm wearing my hopeful pin, and I know the hopeful sign has been on display in the meeting room throughout. And there's a thing that's prominent on the internet today, which is this idea that an accusation is a confession. Have you heard this little trope? An accusation is a confession. You're doing this probably means you're doing it too, and you don't want anyone else to know. But if an accusation is a confession, I think sometimes being an evangelist is your biggest audience is your own self. So when we started connecting with Charlie Hewitt about a year ago, and thinking about like how his art and his message might resonate in more communities that we work with and with more people, and then we had him as our keynoter at the annual meeting. And I was presenting a couple weeks after Charlie had presented, and I had these slides, but I didn't have like Charlie's massive 5-foot lit up sign. And I'm like, Charlie, it's just not the same without the massive 5-foot lit up sign to drive the point home. He's like, come by, I'll give you one. So I went by and I got the 5-footer and the little 2-footer as well. And so, but the thing about it is, for me personally, like last year was a pretty tough year, personally, professionally. This year it's been a pretty tough year in certain ways. But like just knowing that I'm driving around with these 2 hopeful signs, in my hatchback, like, is keeping me going. It's giving me hope, even though I'm pretending that I'm being an ambassador to bring the hope to other people, right? And so, so I think always like don't hesitate in bringing hope and vision to others. It's okay that you're really giving yourself a pep talk, at the same time, and we all need that. So those are just a few thoughts, and then the final thing I want to close on. This is kind of random. Don't want to get too tangential, but how many of you know the poet Raymond Carver? I got turned on to Carver in college. If you get a chance, I think these moments of like closing and beginning always make me think of the anthology A New Path to the Waterfall, which was published after Carver died. Died at 50. He was a severe alcoholic. At 40, they told him he had 6 months to live. He went sober and got 10 more years out of life. And these poems and fragments of poems, read Hummingbird, you'll love it. Read Gravy, 10 years of gravy he had, and read one called End Fragment. It just, to me, I think captures some of the emotion of that little sense of loss and closure from things in life. And then the final thing I want to close on. So last night after dinner, we have an occasional like quarterly Zoom tales that we started during the pandemic with some of my college and graduate school friends. And I wasn't drinking because I still had to write talking points for the floor speeches today. But so my friend in New York City, his son's just about to graduate from a Catholic school there that he went to also, and they had some of the awards. And so he was holding up like the Lucite award that his son had just gotten this week. And it was saying, we're giving you this award for embodying the Jesuit principles of loving. And because everyone else was drunk, there was a lot of tangential and not, and not particularly, heartwarming dialogue about like, what if he takes this plaque with him to his dorm room in college, and how are his peers and potential amorous interests going to react to having this lucite plaque in your room that says, "I got an award for loving." But I was thinking about this morning, all joking aside, of how deeply important that principle is in leadership. So. As much as we indirectly, gave this award some ribbing in our friend group last night, I just want to say, don't lose sight of the end that so much that drives great leadership is about loving. It's about loving yourself. It's about loving the community. It's about loving the people that work for you. And hopefully the love you forged in this class will never go away. Congratulations, and thank you for investing yourself in Leadership Maine.